A few years ago, I bought a small booklet from the 1930s entitled Who Owns Australia? It is a work of the left, back when they were seriously interested in economics. It lists company after company and how much money they made in Australia. It's an interesting historical document, but that's not what I mean when I ask the question, who owns Australia? No company thinks that it owns Australia. Not even business believes it owns Australia. They may expect things, but they do not claim ownership. But there is an organisation that does believe that it owns Australia, and that is the Australian government, that it is the supreme authority. However, there are problems with that idea, and that problem can be summed up in a short phrase: the Australian people. The Australian people own Australia, not the Australian government, and here's why. Government, all government, is a state of trusteeship. Its role is to keep the country running, to reconcile the past, the present, and the future, and to guarantee to the best of its ability that the country has a future, to protect it, and to provide the authority to serve the nation. What got me to ask the question was not the book I mentioned, as I had asked the question before I saw the book. In fact, that's one of the reasons I bought the book, but because of immigration. I read an article by Peter Brimelow, the editor of VDare, and in one post he wrote that both the American Democratic and Republican parties were parties of treason, and I instantly knew he was right. I had not thought that way before, but now I do. Of course, his criticism is just as true around the Western world, including Australia. Our Liberal and Labor parties are also parties of treason. Now, some people will say that's ridiculous. Immigration has always been a part of Australia's history. True, up to a point. Immigration was predominantly from Britain to Australia. In other words, from one British country to another British country. There were exceptions, but that's what they remained, exceptions. But then it was decided to allow non-British people to immigrate to Australia in large numbers, to change the ethnic composition of the nation. But what right does a mere political party have to do such a thing? It can do such a thing if it believes that through forming the government it owns Australia. But it breaks the covenant between the government and the people, between the nation and the state. The Parliament of Australia is the supreme law-making authority within Australia, except when the Constitution is involved. Then only the Australian people have the authority to change it. But the ethnic composition is not mentioned in the Constitution, nor has Parliament ever really addressed the issue. It has simply changed immigration laws and the number of immigrants at its own discretion. But the government exists not to create its own reality, to change things as it sees fit. It must at all times be loyal to the people, the nation. Immigration of non-British people into Australia was not loyal, and the political parties knew this because they have never allowed the issue to be put to a plebiscite or a referendum. Never has an election been fought over the issue because both major parties support mass immigration. They continue to act as if they own Australia, but they do not, nor does the Parliament have the right to change the composition of the nation. It does not have the right to change the ethnic, racial, or religious composition of the nation. The parties of treason need to be stopped before there is no nation.